Hello everyone. Welcome back and thanks for joining us today. We have a brand new story to share with you, so let's get started. My name is Rachel, and at 48 years old, I thought my life had long settled into a peaceful, predictable rhythm. Married for nearly 25 years to my husband David, we shared a comfortable home, quiet evenings, and a life marked by routine rather than excitement. David, a senior manager at a respected firm, often came home talking animatedly about his work, though I'd grown accustomed to tuning it out, nodding along at the right moments without truly listening. Yet one cool autumn evening, something changed, something subtle yet deeply unsettling, casting ripples through the still waters of our marriage. David returned home unusually excited, his face flushed with admiration as he described an incident at the office. It was Ethan again, a name I had heard casually from time to time. Ethan had recently stood up in a crucial meeting, boldly challenging senior management and saving the company from a strategic error. David spoke of him with a mixture of pride and awe, as though Ethan were a symbol of everything he admired but perhaps lacked himself. For the first time, David's enthusiasm stirred a curiosity within me, making Ethan more than just another name. Suddenly, this colleague I'd never met became an intriguing figure, someone whose presence lingered mysteriously in my mind. Days later, David insisted I accompany him to a formal corporate event, a lavish gathering that I usually dreaded attending. As we stepped into the ballroom that evening, surrounded by sophisticated chatter and glittering chandeliers, I felt a sense of unease. It was as though my instincts sensed something about to unfold. Amid the sea of unfamiliar faces, I suddenly found myself face to face with Ethan. He was not what I had pictured. He was strikingly handsome, confident, with a subtle charm that immediately drew me in. His eyes, deep and intelligent, met mine with a lingering gaze, and a strange, magnetic tension surged through me. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Rachel," he said smoothly, extending his hand. The brief touch of our hands sent an unexpected jolt of warmth through me. My heartbeat quickened, making me wonder if he had felt it too. Throughout the evening, I found my attention repeatedly drawn back to Ethan, noticing how effortlessly he commanded conversations, how his laughter filled the room, how he subtly acknowledged me from afar. Each glance we exchanged deepened the unsettling feeling within me, a mixture of excitement, fear, and confusion. Later, when David left my side momentarily, Ethan stepped closer, his voice low yet clear over the soft hum of the room. "You don't seem comfortable here," he observed gently, his eyes filled with genuine curiosity. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure how to respond. How could he see through my carefully constructed facade so easily? Before I could answer, David reappeared, and Ethan stepped back, smiling politely but leaving his unspoken question hanging heavily in the air. As we walked away, I could still feel Ethan's gaze upon me. The unsettling realization dawned on me that, for the first time in years, I had felt truly seen, not as David's wife or as a figure playing a familiar role, but as myself. And this unexpected awakening left me shaken, curious, and profoundly unsettled. In the days following that evening, an unfamiliar tension took hold of me, pulling me in conflicting directions. Each quiet moment was filled with replayed conversations and lingering glances, casting Ethan's image vividly into my mind. His subtle observation haunted me. "You don't seem comfortable here." It was true, I wasn't comfortable. But until Ethan had voiced it, I hadn't realized just how much discomfort I'd grown accustomed to. Living in quiet complacency beside David, my husband was a good man, reliable, kind, steady, but our marriage had slipped quietly into routine, and I'd allowed myself to fade, unnoticed and unacknowledged. One afternoon, while David was at work, my phone buzzed, breaking the quiet of my solitude. I glanced casually at the screen, my heart skipping a beat when I saw an unfamiliar number. I opened the message, breathing unevenly. It read simply, "Hi Rachel, it's Ethan. I hope it's all right. I got your number from the company directory. It was wonderful to finally meet you. Perhaps we could chat again sometime?" My fingers trembled slightly as I reread the words, an internal battle waging between the excitement that pulsed through me and the heavy weight of guilt. My first instinct was to ignore the message, to let silence speak for me. But curiosity, The same intense curiosity that had been sparked the night we met, won out. Hesitating, I typed a cautious reply. Hello, Ethan. It was nice meeting you as well. Perhaps we'll cross paths again at the next company gathering. I sent it quickly before I could second-guess myself, rationalizing that I'd kept my words neutral and appropriate. Yet Ethan responded immediately, his message smooth, almost daring in its casualness. I hope it's sooner than that. Conversations with you seem far too meaningful to wait until another office party. My pulse quickened at his boldness, even as unease crept along my spine. How had we crossed into such intimate territory so quickly? That night, as David sat across from me at dinner, chatting obliviously about office politics and weekend plans, I felt a pang of deep sorrow mixed with guilt. Here was the man I'd built my life with. Yet lately we had become strangers sharing a table, exchanging empty pleasantries. David, I ventured carefully, breaking the flow of his words. Do you ever feel like we've lost something along the way? He paused mid-sentence, confusion clouding his eyes. Lost something? Like what? I hesitated, the truth caught painfully in my throat. Like, ourselves, who we used to be together. Before everything became routine. He leaned back, clearly uncomfortable. That's marriage, Rachel. We're stable, comfortable, what more is there supposed to be? His response, casual and dismissive, left me feeling profoundly alone. That night, sleep evaded me. I lay awake beside David, staring at the ceiling, consumed by conflicting emotions. Ethan's message echoed quietly in my mind, a tempting whisper promising something unknown, something beyond the predictable rhythms of my life. As dawn broke, I knew that something inside me had irreversibly shifted. A door had opened, revealing desires and truths I'd long ignored. Yet crossing that threshold would mean risking everything, my marriage, my security, my carefully constructed life. And as I faced the uncertain days ahead, I was filled with both dread and a desperate, irresistible yearning to finally be seen, truly seen, once again. In the days following my conversation with David, a restless unease settled over my life, pulling at me relentlessly. Each morning became harder than the last as the gap between who I was and who I'd become widened, swallowing me in quiet despair. David's words echoed incessantly in my mind. That's marriage, Rachel. His resignation felt like a bitter defeat, amplifying my loneliness, and deepening the chasm that Ethan's presence had illuminated. I knew I shouldn't seek refuge in thoughts of another man. But Ethan's voice, gentle, sincere, attentive, had already carved out a space within me, a place my heart revisited often, even when I willed it not to. One afternoon, feeling suffocated by my own home, I decided to find solace at a small cafe near David's office. I told myself it was merely to clear my head, but deep down, I knew there was another reason, a quiet, unspoken hope I might see Ethan again. It felt reckless, yet undeniably human. As I entered the cafe, my breath caught sharply when I saw Ethan sitting by the window, notebook open, lost in thought. Before I could retreat, his gaze lifted, and our eyes locked. His smile, warm yet cautious, invited me closer. And against my better judgment, I moved toward him. Rachel, he said softly, his voice carrying a note of genuine surprise. I didn't expect to see you here. Neither did I admitted truthfully, my heart racing with anxiety and excitement. I guess I just needed some space. His eyes softened with understanding. Space is something we all need sometimes. As we talked, each moment stretched and expanded, wrapping us in intimacy that felt dangerous yet exhilarating. Ethan asked about my life, not just the surface but beneath, where my fears and dreams lingered hidden. Unlike the conversations at home, so often brief, practical, routine, this was a journey inward, guided by Ethan's attentive eyes and careful questions. Do you ever feel lost? I finally asked him, my voice barely above a whisper. Like you're watching your life from outside yourself? Ethan paused, his eyes deeply reflective, more often than I'd like to admit. He replied, it's easy to lose yourself when everyone else defines who you're supposed to be. His honesty touched something deep inside me, giving permission to reveal my own hidden truths. I've felt unseen for so long. I almost forgot what it's like to truly be noticed. Ethan leaned slightly closer, his voice gentle yet resolute. You deserve to be seen. Rachel, everyone does. In that vulnerable moment, the space between us thinned dangerously. Charged with a connection that terrified and exhilarated me, Ethan was not simply an escape, but a mirror reflecting back my own neglected desires, my own forgotten worth. Just then, as if fate wanted to heighten my torment, I glanced out the window and froze. David was standing on the sidewalk, clearly visible through the glass, speaking casually with a colleague. He hadn't yet noticed me, but the risk of discovery sent adrenaline flooding through my veins. Ethan, I whispered urgently, pulling back sharply. I need to go. He followed my gaze, quickly understanding the threat. Of course, he said gently, a flicker of regret passing through his eyes. Please, take care. I left quickly, my pulse thundering as guilt and fear intertwined painfully within me. Walking past David unnoticed, my breath shallow and hurried, I realized how precarious the line I'd crossed had become. That evening, as I sat silently beside David, my thoughts were consumed by Ethan's compassion, his understanding, and the realization that I was teetering dangerously between the life I'd always known and one I'd never dared to imagine. In the days following my unsettling encounter at the cafe, a heavy, suffocating silence enveloped our home. It was as if David sensed a change, a subtle shift in the way I moved around him, cautious and hesitant. Our evenings passed quietly, marked only by superficial conversations about work or routine household matters. Beneath the veneer of calm, tension tightened its grip, each unspoken word driving a wedge deeper between us. I wanted desperately to reach out, to bridge the expanding void, but the shadow of Ethan, his attentive gaze, his probing questions, his unspoken promises, loomed in my thoughts, blocking my way back to the woman I used to be. Then one evening, as twilight cast long shadows through our bedroom window, David finally broke the silence. He stood by the dresser, slowly buttoning up his shirt, each movement deliberate and heavy with hesitation. Rachel, he began, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. I've noticed you're distant lately. Is there something wrong? His question hung in the air, suspended between us, laden with vulnerability and expectation. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. The truth surged up within me, clawing for release, but I pushed it down, terrified of what honesty might unleash. I'm just tired, I said quietly, hating the tremor in my voice, hating the lie even more. David turned toward me fully, his eyes searching mine with an intensity I'd almost forgotten he possessed. It's more than that, he pressed softly, moving closer. I've seen this look before. Years ago, when we first struggled to find our footing. You're drifting. Rachel, please, talk to me. His sincerity cut through my defenses, and tears welled suddenly in my eyes. David, it's not you, I began hesitantly, my voice breaking. Or maybe it is, I don't know anymore. Sometimes I feel invisible, like we're living parallel lives, not truly seeing each other. The room fell silent again, David's expression shifting from confusion to hurt, then finally to deep understanding. He reached out slowly, grasping my hand, his touch gentle yet uncertain, as if afraid I might pull away. I never meant for us to end up like this, he admitted, his voice heavy with sadness. Life became so busy, so routine, I just assumed we were fine. Maybe I stopped paying attention to what you needed. His admission was like a bomb and a dagger simultaneously, relief mingled painfully with guilt. For the first time in years, he was acknowledging the very loneliness Ethan had recognized so quickly. Yet even as David's warmth and sincerity drew me toward him, a quiet part of me wondered if it was too late. I don't want to lose us, he whispered, his voice barely audible, but I can't fix this alone. We have to find our way back together. A wave of regret surged through me, mixing with a fragile hope. I squeezed his hand tightly, holding on as though it might anchor me, keep me from being swept away by my confusion. I want that too, I whispered back, and I meant it. Yet later that night, as David slept peacefully beside me, my thoughts betrayed me again. Ethan's face appeared unbidden, his gentle gaze filled with an intensity I couldn't shake. I felt trapped, torn between loyalty to the man I'd spent decades building a life with, and the growing yearning for something I'd discovered in another's eyes, something raw, unsettling, and terrifyingly real. Lying awake, I wondered how I had become this woman caught between two lives. And if finding my way back to David was truly possible, or if Ethan had already become more than a fleeting curiosity. In the aftermath of our honest yet fragile conversation, each day felt like walking on thin ice, one careful step after another. Each word measured, each glance loaded with silent questions. David made genuine efforts to reconnect, returning home early from work, helping in the garden he'd once ignored, and even preparing dinners he hoped might spark familiar warmth. And though I smiled gratefully, guilt clutched at my heart because beneath my appreciation lay an undeniable truth, despite his earnest attempts. Something inside me remained restless, unsettled, yearning for an answer I still couldn't define. One afternoon, as sunlight bathed our quiet home, the gentle hum of summer birds drifting through open windows, my phone buzzed, sending my heart into a sudden panic. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, a name I'd carefully avoided. An unresolved tension hanging over me like a persistent shadow. My pulse quickened, my fingers trembling slightly as I hesitated, battling between curiosity and caution. Finally, driven by a force stronger than reason, I opened the message. Rachel, we need to talk. Please meet me at the cafe tomorrow. Just once more. His words ignited a storm inside me, fear, anticipation, guilt, and something deeper I refused to name. My heart hammered in my chest, the sound echoing in my ears. The memory of his quiet intensity, his uncanny ability to see beneath the surface, stirred emotions I had tried desperately to bury. I knew seeing Ethan again was dangerous, a step that could shatter the fragile peace David and I had begun to rebuild. Yet, the thought of ignoring his request, of never hearing what he needed to say, filled me with an inexplicable sorrow. That evening, as David cleared the dinner table, I watched him, wrestling with myself, the words on the edge of my tongue, desperate to spill forth, desperate to seek comfort in honesty. But fear held me captive, fear of losing the stability we'd built. Fear of destroying the delicate hope in his eyes. As he reached out, brushing my hand gently, warmth radiating from his familiar touch, guilt surged again. I smiled, a smile that felt false and painful, one he gratefully returned, unaware of the storm brewing beneath my surface. The next afternoon, my resolve shattered entirely as I stood outside the cafe, heart pounding, palms damp with anxiety. Ethan sat waiting near the window, eyes scanning the street, a thoughtful expression etched deeply into his features. The moment our eyes met, a surge of electricity passed through me, leaving me breathless, terrified, yet undeniably drawn forward. Inside, I slid into the seat across from him, acutely aware of every sound, every movement around us, each detail magnified by the intensity of the moment. He gazed at me quietly for several seconds, his expression tender yet filled with unspoken turmoil. Rachel, he began softly, voice gentle but firm. I know I'm complicating your life, I never meant to, but I had to see you again. To tell you, if nothing else, that meeting you has changed me. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. I felt his words penetrate deep within, sparking a fire that both frightened and exhilarated me. Ethan, I whispered shakily, my voice betraying me. What are we doing? We can't be here. He leaned closer, his eyes intense yet gentle. I think you feel it too. Rachel, the connection, the possibility. All I'm asking is for honesty. Tell me you don't feel it. And I promise, I'll walk away. The moment stretched between us, filled with tension, expectation, and unbearable vulnerability. I opened my mouth, ready to deny it, to protect myself, to choose safety. Yet as my eyes met his, something in me broke free, forcing me to acknowledge the truth, painful, terrifying, and undeniable. I do, I whispered finally, tears blurring my vision. God help me, Ethan, but I do. And at that moment, I knew I had crossed an irreversible line, leaving behind the familiar shores of safety and plunging headlong into waters I could neither control nor predict. The moment those words escaped my lips, a profound silence settled between us, heavy and electrified with all we had confessed. Ethan's gaze never wavered, his eyes capturing mine in an unspoken understanding, a shared vulnerability that now linked us irreversibly. The cafe's gentle hum faded into insignificance. as though time itself had paused to acknowledge the gravity of what we had admitted. My heart raced painfully, my pulse drumming in my ears, each beat echoing the magnitude of this new, frightening truth. I felt simultaneously lighter for voicing my feelings and burdened by the weight of what it might cost me. "I can't believe I said that," I whispered shakily, panic and guilt swirling within me. "I don't know how this happened." Ethan reached across the table, hesitating momentarily before gently placing his hand on mine, a gesture so simple yet so deeply comforting it made me ache. "Rachel," he said softly, his voice steady but edged with compassion. "I didn't want to complicate your life. I didn't seek this out. But sometimes life has other plans." I stared at our entwined fingers, my breath hitching as an overwhelming wave of emotion washed over me. "But what now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "What are we supposed to do?" He exhaled slowly, eyes filled with empathy yet shadowed by uncertainty. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "All I know is I couldn't carry this alone anymore. You deserve to know how deeply you've affected me. How real this is." Tears welled in my eyes, spilling silently down my cheeks. "I never meant to hurt David," I whispered, guilt seizing my heart like a vice. "He's been my anchor for so long. And yet somehow, I feel utterly lost." Ethan gently tightened his grip, anchoring me to the moment. "Rachel, I never wanted to take his place. But maybe this is about discovering something buried within yourself. Something you've denied for too long." His words resonated painfully, echoing truths I'd been unwilling to face. I had spent years fulfilling roles and expectations, content yet never truly alive, sacrificing desires I didn't even realize I possessed. Ethan hadn't created this restlessness, he'd simply illuminated something I could no longer ignore. Suddenly, my phone vibrated sharply, breaking the intimacy of our moment and pulling me back into the reality I'd briefly abandoned. David's name flashed on the screen, the sight of it sending a cold rush of fear through me. "David," I murmured anxiously, glancing toward Ethan, my eyes wide with panic. I realized then how reckless I'd been, how quickly my life could unravel. "Answer it," Ethan urged gently, pulling his hand away slowly, though reluctance shadowed his eyes. "I'll wait." With trembling fingers, I accepted the call. David's voice, familiar and warm, filled with genuine concern, echoed painfully in my ear. "Rachel, everything okay? You didn't come home yet." I got worried. My throat constricted, and I swallowed desperately, fighting back the anguish threatening to choke me. "I'm fine," I replied, forcing calm into my voice even as tears blurred my vision. "I just needed some air. I'll be home soon." The call ended, leaving an unbearable silence once more. Ethan watched me quietly, his expression gentle but pained. "You need time," he whispered, reading the torment in my eyes. "Whatever you decide, Rachel, I'll understand, but don't lose sight of yourself again." I stood shakily, overwhelmed by the magnitude of emotions that consumed me. "I have to go," I breathed, stepping away, though my heart screamed to stay. As I moved toward the door, feeling Ethan's gaze follow me until I vanished from sight, a chilling thought gripped me. The path ahead was no longer clear, each step fraught with uncertainty. I was torn between safety and desire, duty and truth. The choice awaiting me at home would redefine not only my marriage but my very understanding of myself. And as I stepped out into the evening, I knew my life had changed irrevocably. Driving home felt surreal, each mile amplifying the conflict within me. The familiar roads, once a source of comfort, now stretched ominously into uncertainty. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened, a physical manifestation of the turmoil roiling inside me. Ethan's words replayed continuously, weaving themselves intricately into my conscience. "Don't lose sight of yourself again." The simplicity of that plea carried a profoundness that resonated deeply, stirring a painful awareness of all the compromises I'd made without ever realizing it. Yet, even now, a bitter guilt gnawed relentlessly at the edge of my consciousness, reminding me of the man who had stood faithfully by my side for over 2 decades. When I arrived home, the house was silent, too silent. The warm glow of the porch lights did little to comfort me as I walked hesitantly toward the front door. I paused, my heart racing, knowing David waited just beyond this threshold, oblivious to the storm raging within me. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside, forcing a mask of composure even as I felt everything crumbling beneath the surface. David appeared in the hallway almost immediately, his expression softening into relief when he saw me. "Rachel," he murmured, moving toward me, his arms reaching out instinctively. I was starting to worry. The moment his arms encircled me, tears sprang uncontrollably to my eyes. The warmth and familiarity of his embrace brought an unbearable ache. A sharp reminder of the love we had built. Steady but quiet, comforting but perhaps incomplete. I buried my face in his shoulder, allowing the tears to fall silently, hoping he'd attribute them to simple exhaustion rather than the deep chasm of confusion tearing through my heart. David pulled back gently, his eyes searching mine, full of concern. "Something's wrong," he said softly, reading me with unsettling accuracy. "Tell me, Rachel, please." His sincere tone pierced through me, and for a moment, I felt utterly transparent. How could I explain to the man who had given me decades of quiet devotion that somewhere along the way, I'd lost myself? How could I express the terrifying realization that I was longing for something more? Something I couldn't fully articulate yet felt profoundly in Ethan's presence? I drew in a shaky breath, stepping back, needing space, yet fearful of creating distance. "I don't know where to start," I whispered, my voice trembling with the weight of unspoken truths. "I feel like I've been living someone else's life, like I've forgotten who I really am." David's face clouded briefly with confusion, then softened again, empathy replacing the uncertainty. He stepped forward cautiously, holding my gaze with quiet intensity. "Rachel, whatever you're feeling, we can face it together. Don't shut me out." His sincerity broke something inside me, releasing a torrent of anguish. "Can we?" I asked desperately. "Can we really, David? Because for so long, I've felt invisible. I've become someone who lives beside you, not with you." The confession hovered painfully in the air between us, raw and undeniable. David recoiled slightly, the sting of my words evident. But he didn't retreat. Instead, he nodded slowly, absorbing the impact of the truth we'd both avoided for far too long. "I'm sorry," he finally said, voice thick with regret. "I never meant for you to feel unseen. Rachel, I love you, I've always loved you. But I see now that love isn't always enough. Tell me, is there someone else?" The directness of his question made my heart freeze. For an instant, I hesitated, the truth sitting precariously on my lips. Yet, looking into his eyes, I realized this wasn't merely about Ethan. This was about a profound emptiness that Ethan had inadvertently exposed. "Not created." "No," I said, the word barely a whisper but filled with sincerity. "There's just me, trying to find myself again." The silence stretched painfully, each second feeling like an eternity as we stood on the precipice of an unknown future. David reached out hesitantly, his hand gently brushing mine. "Then we'll start there, Rachel, together." As his words settled over me, I felt an unexpected surge of hope entwined with fear. Uncertainty mixed with possibility. For the first time in years, David and I were truly looking at one another, raw and vulnerable, acknowledging that our path forward would require courage and honesty beyond anything we'd previously known. And as we stood there, suspended between past comfort and future possibility, I wondered deeply whether love and trust could truly withstand the truth we had finally faced. Days stretched into weeks, each moment filled with a fragile, cautious dance as David and I navigated the uncertain landscape we had opened between us. We moved carefully around each other, our conversations gentle but hesitant, each word chosen as though it might shatter the tentative peace we'd begun to rebuild. At night, as we lay side by side, the quiet space between us seemed infinite, filled with silent questions and unspoken fears that kept me staring sleeplessly at the ceiling. Could we truly find our way back? Or was our newfound honesty merely prolonging an inevitable goodbye? Then, one evening, the tension finally fractured. I returned home to find David seated at the kitchen table, shoulders slumped, a letter clutched tightly in his hand. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. I hesitated in the doorway, afraid of disturbing the quiet torment etched into his features. "David?" My voice was barely above a whisper, breaking through the silence cautiously. He lifted his head slowly, his expression revealing a vulnerability I'd never seen before. "Rachel, I need to talk to you," he said softly, eyes filled with an anguish that made my heart clench. As he slid the letter toward me, dread settled like ice in my stomach. I reached out hesitantly, my fingers trembling as I unfolded the paper. It was from Ethan. My breath caught sharply, panic swelling as I read the words carefully scrawled across the page. Ethan had written candidly, expressing his feelings openly, feelings he had never explicitly declared to me, but that I had secretly suspected. Every sentence was filled with longing, regret, and an unapologetic honesty that pierced through my carefully constructed world. Yet beneath his declarations lay a clear recognition that his place was not by my side. That our brief connection had been a catalyst, not an answer. "Did something happen between you two?" David's voice was thick with pain, barely restrained anger simmering beneath the surface. "No, never," I said urgently, my eyes meeting his with desperate sincerity. "Not like that. Ethan made me realize things about myself. But this," I gestured at the letter helplessly, tears pooling at the edges of my vision. I had no idea he'd feel so strongly. David exhaled heavily, running a hand through his hair as he fought to control his emotions. "Rachel, tell me truthfully, do you have feelings for him?" The question hung heavily between us, its weight suffocating. In that moment, I knew I had to confront the raw truth that had haunted me for weeks. My heart pounded painfully in my chest as I searched for words that could explain the complexity of what I felt. "No," I finally answered, my voice steady despite the trembling within me. What I felt wasn't for Ethan himself, it was the way he saw me. "David, he noticed parts of me I'd forgotten. Parts one desperately wanted you to see again." David's expression softened slightly, understanding slowly replacing hurt. He reached across the table, grasping my hand with gentle urgency. "Rachel, I see you now, truly see you, and if it takes every ounce of strength I have, I'll never let myself lose sight of you again." His promise settled warmly around my heart, healing a small part of the ache I'd carried so deeply. But even as I squeezed his hand in return, I knew this moment wasn't closure, it was a beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with hard conversations and painful revelations still to come. Yet in David's eyes, I saw something powerful, a willingness to fight for us, to rediscover each other anew. As we sat together in that silent kitchen, letter forgotten between us, hope blossomed faintly amid the shadows of our past mistakes. The future stretched out uncertain and fragile, but perhaps stronger precisely because it was built on truth, vulnerability, and the courage to face what had long been buried. For the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed deeply, feeling lighter, hopeful, and cautiously ready to believe that together, we might just find our way home again. Life often teaches us profound lessons through the moments we least expect, gently reminding us how vital it is to remain open, honest, and deeply present with those we love. Rachel and David's journey shows us that true intimacy isn't built on perfection but rather on vulnerability and the courage to confront our hidden fears. Have you ever experienced something similar? A moment where your heart called you to rediscover the person you thought you knew best, or even yourself? We would love to hear your stories, thoughts, and reflections, so please share them in the comments below. If this story touched you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel, Heartfelt Tales Reddit, to stay updated on Rachel and David's journey as it continues to unfold. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, ensuring you won't miss any future parts filled with emotion, drama, and deep insights into the complexities of life and love. Together, let's explore these heartfelt tales and discover what it truly means to connect with each other and ourselves.